held to his decision until death. My father chose me, his firstborn child, to succeed him. And yet, Alicent's son sits my throne.
The realm will soon tear itself apart. If men do not remember the oath sworn to King Viserys and to his rightful heir.
I mean to fight this war and win it.
The Hightails are marching. You must crush this beast at its head.
When the desire to kill and burn takes hold and reason is forgotten.
Our terms are very simple. Renounce the false king and bend the knee to the king, or your house burns.
You will not even remember what began the war in the first place.
We fight for our queen!
I feel what I've begun.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my new House of the Dragon Season 2 trailer for the other new trailer, like the second trailer for Team Black. There's a bunch of different footage, but a bunch more Easter eggs and a bunch more dragons, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes just like I did for Season 1 and for the main show, Game of Thrones, and for whatever other spin-offs they wind up doing. They're supposed to be shooting Night of the Seven Kingdoms this year and releasing it at the end of next year, so we will get another prequel next year, I think to bridge the gap, because we're not going to get House of the Dragon Season 3 until 2026. Personally, I'm actually happy now that they're planning for that, so we don't have 2 years without any kind of Game of Thrones at all, even if it's going to be from alternating shows year to year. But if it wasn't clear why they released 2 different trailers for House of the Dragon Season 2, they're meant to represent both sides in the Dance of the Dragons, Team Green and Team Black. The whole reason why I made my Team Green trailer video first is just because that's the one that popped in my feed. I got the Twitter alert for that first before I got the alert for the Team Black trailer. So when I was making that video, I didn't actually know if they were going to be dropping it until I was almost done making the video. Personally, I consider myself more of a Team Black supporter just because that is the way it was meant to go down within the context of the story. Very clearly, Viserys meant for Rhaenyra to become the next queen and was talking about the prophecy when he was talking to Alicent, even though she was confused about which Aegon he was referring to when he was talking about the prince who was promised. She thought that he was talking about Aegon II, her Aegon, because he's named the same as Aegon the Conqueror. So each of the different trailers is meant to show you the viewpoint of the different teams as they try to get support for their side in the Dance of the Dragons. They're basically going around the different realms, the different great houses to try and get their support in the war.
Our terms are very simple. Renounce the false king and bend the knee to the king, or your house burns.
So the beginning of the Team Black trailer actually begins with the funeral of Lucerys. This is him on the funeral pyre here being burnt. R.I.P. to Lucerys, because this is meant to set up a big retaliation from Daemon at the beginning of the season with Blood and Cheese in episode 1. There have been a couple other previews from that storyline, you see Helaena here with her children looking really afraid at someone off of camera. That's probably from Blood and Cheese. Rhaenyra starts with her voiceover saying, "My father chose me, his firstborn child, to basically become the next queen of the Seven Kingdoms." Technically, it's the Six Kingdoms in Dorne, because at this period in Targaryen history, they had not conquered Dorne yet, so it hadn't become part of Westeros, technically. Then we get our very first shot of Harrenhal from this side of the bay. This is Harrenhal in the distance, but the first shot we've ever seen of the actual God's Eye in the Isle of Faces. Very, very important location in the lore of Game of Thrones, in the history of Westeros, and the world just in general. This gets into the War for the Dawn, the Long Night, the history of the Children of the Forest, so we'll talk about this when we get to this part of the episode, because it's also critical in the Dance of the Dragons to a huge battle between Daemon and Aemond, for everybody that wants to see that chaos go down on screen. During the last trailer, Aemond was boasting about fighting Daemon, if my uncle wants it, I will fight him, but he's a bit of a sweet summer child when it comes to stuff like that. He talks real big, but if you remember during Season 1, he almost challenged Daemon, he seemed like he was going to start a fight, but Daemon kind of chuckled at him and he backed down. It was Daemon's way of telling him, there's no way you're going to win this fight, I will destroy you. But here's the thing, I don't think their actual fight, their one-on-one match between Vhagar, Arrax, and the two of them going at each other over the God's Eye is going to happen until Season 3. The actual dragon that's flying to Harrenhal here actually seems like Syrax, though. I'm not totally sure. Some of these shots of the different dragons in the trailer are kind of blurry, so it's kind of hard to make some of them out. This is just another shot of Dragonstone. I believe this is also Syrax, and in the distance on the shore there, you can actually see Storm's End, R.I.P. Lucerys again. Every time we see Storm's End this season, it's just going to remind us of what happened to Lucerys. When she says, Alicent's son sits my throne, talking about Aegon II, this is the same shot from the Greens trailer of him entering the throne room and getting ready to sit on the Iron Throne. We get a shot of the family having dinner at Dragonstone. This person on the right, this big person, actually might be Hugh Hammer, not totally sure though. One of the other big new things in Season 2 is introducing some of the Dragonseeds. They're basically all the people who are capable of bonding with dragons, because on Dragonstone they control a bunch of dragons that are currently riderless, and they want to be able to activate them. Dragons are kind of like nuclear weapons inside the Game of Thrones universe, so the more of them you have, the more invincible you become, or the closer to invincible you become, but not totally invincible, because one of the downsides to the dragons and the dragon riders is that they can always switch sides. It would not be a Game of Thrones show if there wasn't a bunch of backstabbing and betrayals going on both sides. We get many more scenes of Dragonstone from around the castle. She goes out at night to Mount Syrax, looks like she's going somewhere. Then we get a bunch more footage up in the north at Winterfell and what seems like the Wall. This is meant to be Tom Taylor playing a version of Cregan Stark, basically the current reigning lord of Winterfell at the time. Notice they're walking on top of the wall, so we will see the Night's Watch again. Generally, the shot is also meant to mirror the beginning of a Game of Thrones series when Jon Snow was walking on top of the wall for the first time with Benjen. And probably one of the other biggest Easter eggs in this shot here, notice on his back, he has his family's ancestral Valyrian steel blade, Ice, which belonged to Ned Stark before it was melted down by Tywin Lannister. R.I.P. to Ice, but it still exists as the Valyrian greatsword Ice at this point in history. Typically, it's passed down amongst the lords of Winterfell, like whoever was the previous lord to the next one. Cregan Stark winds up being a big ally of Rhaenyra's because he kind of went through the same thing that Rhaenyra is going through right now with someone within the Stark family trying to usurp the lordship of Winterfell. That whole Stark civil war went down during the time jump in the middle of House of the Dragon Season 1. So that's why he has the line in the trailer when he's talking about the rightful heir, Rhaenyra, quote-unquote, because he himself was the rightful heir, but someone tried to usurp that from him. I'm not totally sure which dragon this is. It could be Syrax again, but the green soldier here, or the green knight that's frozen with dragon fear, is actually Gwaine Hightower, Alicent's younger brother. We actually saw him during Season 1 because Daemon put him on his ass. You just didn't see his face because he was clad in armor. We get another shot of the battle. This seems like it's from Rook's Rest. This is Aemond inside the Red Keep, Otto Hightower, the Lannisters, Corlys Velaryon getting ready to inspect their fleet. It just seems like he's giving some battle advice to Rhaenyra. This is Daemon when it seems like he first comes to Harrenhal to try and capture it. His whole speech about renouncing the false king is when they're going around to the different lords and ladies of Westeros, basically asking them to swear fealty to Rhaenyra. This is meant to be a funeral procession after Blood and Cheese. It's kind of spoilery, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but if you've read the books, then you actually know what's going on here. This will probably be in like episode 2 or episode 3. Then we get the rest of Daemon's voiceover as he's talking to another great house, asking them to swear fealty or burn their house, essentially. Maybe this is when he goes to Riverrun, maybe this is somewhere else in the Riverlands. We get a longer battle scene from Rook's Rest in the forest here. This is meant to be Baela on Moondancer. She was also in the last trailer. I confused her for one of the other dragons. It's meant to be a change from the books. I think she's going to be showing up here after the big battle at Rook's Rest. In the original story, she wasn't super active during this period in the actual war itself. It just seems like the show wants to use her more. Like there's more dragons, so they want to use them more. Then this whole conversation that Rhaenys is having with Rhaenyra is basically about the fact that both sides of this, like the Greens and the Blacks, will both wind up being losers. Like there'll be no winner in the Dance of the Dragons because they'll basically be fighting themselves. And eventually, someday, people will not care at all. Like eventually, like the small folk will completely forget about what happened here. So even though it's a really big deal for the people that are involved in this right now, like Rhaenyra and all the Greens, essentially it doesn't matter as much as they think that it matters. Because the real threat is the Night King, the White Walkers. Like that's the whole idea they try to get across in the first couple of episodes. Like there's this prophecy, the long night is coming. We need to be more worried about that, but they're distracted here with the Dance of the Dragons fighting themselves. That was meant to be the whole reason why Aegon conquered the Seven Kingdoms in the first place, so that he could unite the realm and they could present a united front, a united army to fight to stop the Long Night. This really big dragon could be Vhagar, but it could also be Vermithor, just because they both have that giant, long turkey neck that sags because they're so big and they're so old. Like they're the two oldest dragons that are living right now. She says she fears what she's begun. That's the Dance of the Dragons itself, like the actual fighting begins this season. Then we get the night shot of Daemon in Caraxes. And just like the Greens trailer, this Blacks trailer basically has their version of the Targaryen sigil, which is the traditional red and black. At the end of the Greens trailer, they had their version of the sigil, which was gold and green. Daemon and Rhaenyra would call that a perversion, like, how dare you change the tradition? It's meant to be red and black. That was why they got so pissed off at Alicent during season 1 when they came back after the long absence being away from the Red Keep, finding out that she'd gotten rid of all the Targaryen paraphernalia. Like everything about their history, she basically replaced with all this religious iconography from the Seven. There's a bunch of new footage here. Probably the coolest new stuff is Cregan Stark, the North, the Wall, like going back to the Wall, so we might get some White Walker references during this. During this period in history, the Night King, the White Walkers, were still active, but they were mostly active in the lands of Always Winter. They didn't really ramp up their activity till much closer to the events of present day in the Game of Thrones series. But it does seem like each season they keep referencing the prophecy, the Long Night, the White Walkers, the Night King, so there'll be some kind of reference to them at some point this season. It'll seem like it'll happen when Jacaerys goes to the north to try and get Cregan Stark to swear fealty to Rhaenyra, which it seems like he does. In the books, they signed something called the Pact of Ice and Fire, which is another reference to A Song of Ice and Fire, like the prophecy of A Song of Ice and Fire, the prince who was promised. So when we see Cregan Stark, do not be surprised if you see a lot of Jon Snow Easter eggs and references to. Technically, he is Targaryen because he comes from Rhaegar Targaryen, but he is still half Stark through his mother's side, Lyanna Stark. There are also a lot of rumors about what Jacaerys got up to when he was at Winterfell with Cregan Stark. Maybe they'll allude to that, but there's only going to be 8 episodes, so it's not like they have too much time to spend with him up there. One of the other cool things about Cregan Stark is that we get deeper into the Dance of the Dragons timeline. He becomes a much bigger part of the story. So even though there's not that much footage of him right now, he becomes a much bigger character in future seasons. And for those of you asking about them retconning things or introducing new lore, George R.R. Martin does supervise all their scripts and help give them extra lore when they need it. So anytime they introduce brand new stuff, it's usually coming from George R.R. Martin. Because the series is premiering in June this year, we'll probably get some more trailers as we get a little bit closer. Of course, I'll do more bonus videos. If you have any questions or there's any Easter eggs you spotted in this trailer that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. There's supposed to be a couple other really big trailers dropping in the next couple of days. I'll try to do videos for everything, so make sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. Everybody click here for that other House of the Dragon Season 2 trailer for the Greens of the other footage, and click here for all my House of the Dragon videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.